What's up, everybody? This is Fred Richani of the SportsCourier.com. We apologize for the earlier technical difficulties. I am joined by the former WWE Director of Security. He is a fellow Jersey guy. He's also one bad man, so you don't want to mess with him, Mr. Jimmy Noonan. Mr. Noonan, thanks so much for joining us on this July 4th, my friend.
July 4th, is that what it is? I knew it was a holiday today. I just had no idea. Just kidding. Hello, everybody. Hello, Fred. I'm happy to be on your show. I have been interviewed by every jobber in America, and to finally be interviewed by a real journalist is, wow, so I must be doing something right. I got the incredible Fred Richani and the Sports Courier on the other end of my phone. So, I must be doing something right.
Well, I definitely appreciate the kind words, sir. Before we get started about how you ended up in WWE and your journey and going around the world, like, 500 times over, how did you
At
get
least
involved?
500.
How did you get involved in the world of security?
Okay. So in the late 1990s, right before 2000, I was living in New York City, and I'm an actor. I'm doing very well. I just did Sex in the City. I had just done a New York Undercover, an episode of New York Undercover. I had just done the Cosby Mysteries. I was just coming off a Broadway show, and I was just about to do Super Troopers and a movie called Never Again with Jill Clayburgh and Jeffrey Tambor. But when you're an actor in New York City, there's a lot of downtime, and you can only go to the gym so many times, and, you can only stay home alone, and, so many times you can only go to so many auditions, It's a very competitive business, so you have to do other things to pay the rent. So I'm personal training, and I'm doing security. I have a really super personal training business called Holistic Health and Fitness of New York City, and my security business. I'm doing jobs on the side. Well, lo and behold, I start working at WWF New York, the new wrestling-themed restaurant where I think Planet Hollywood is right now. Is it Planet Hollywood? I don't even know. But
I don't even know.
Oh, Hard Rock. Maybe Hard Rock. It's
Hard
one
Rock,
of those.
yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those big theme places. And it's in an incredible area. It's on the corner of 41st and Broadway. And talent comes in every week. They sign autographs. They put on little shows. WWE's doing live Sunday Night Heat. That's what they're doing. And they're doing Velocity or whatever the hell during that time.
I believe it, I think it was during, I remember because I went one time when, Spike Dudley was hosting way back in the day. That was,
we get everybody. I mean, we get Stone Cold, we get Rocky. Mostly we get the mid-carders to come in. But, it was pretty terrific stuff, and you get to know the talent. And I'm an older, mature guy. I'm not a mark. I've never been a monster wrestling fan. And I've been around celebrities my whole life. So, I'm just treating these guys good and doing my job. And the next thing you know, there's an opening at WWE, and I get the call, and I go up for an interview. And the next thing you know, I'm on the road. My first show was in, I think Waco, Texas, in 2000. And it's really that simple. I mean, it's not like I had to jump through a lot of hoops. It's very big, it's very important that the talent is comfortable with you, and the talent was comfortable with me, and they knew me, and that's huge. It's very tough to bring somebody new on the road who you don't know. You don't know if they're a mark, or you don't know how professional they are. Blah 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 blah. So that's a long way of just saying it. It just kind of evolved into something. Being in New York City and Los Angeles, the bigger cities, there's more of a chance to make hookups like this. It's a little tough if you're living in Indianapolis, Indiana, or Omaha, Nebraska, to get jobs like these. But when you're in the big cities, it's a little easier and a little simpler. And the opportunity came, and I was ready, obviously.
And what was the toughest thing you had to adjust to working for WWE? I mean, I'd imagine there's a lot of things. Obviously, you have to earn the wrestlers' respect. You got the travel. What would you say was the hardest aspect of being the director of security?
Well, there's the natural thing, which is the travel. I mean, the travel is just brutal. Getting the guys respect. I was probably older by a couple of years than most of them. I'm a good sized guy. I'm 6'2". I go anywhere between 260 and 290. I'm a serious looking guy. I'm not a mark. They knew I wasn't a mark right away, and that's very important to the guys. So getting their respect, I think, was kind of easy. Plus, I took my job very personally. I think my first week on the road, Eddie came out with Ray doing his entrance at a house show, and some guy got up in Eddie's face, and I pie-faced him. Bam! Right back into his seat. And Eddie and Ray, or Eddie, whoever he came out with, laughed his ass off, and right away the boys knew I was about business. And that I was there to take care of them, and I was always there early, and I always stayed late. So getting their respect was pretty easy. The travel, the downtime, managing your life is the problem. Between kids and family and friends, and these are all things that we have to cultivate in life. You gotta make time to see your friends, and when you don't do that, things start going south. And he's so involved in his job. And so it's kind of like a time management. You got to get home. You got to wash your clothes. You got to take care of the laundry. You got to see your friends and your family. But all you want to do is sleep. It's a pretty brutal schedule. So I guess that's it. I mean, travel, time management, things like that.
Right. And I got to ask you, because we already got some fans that have been tweeting questions the last hour or so. Craziest fan interaction, one that you're allowed to talk about.
Oh, there was a few crazy ones. I mean, one of the ones that got a lot of attention on the internet was the night that the fake Undertaker, I think it was in Bangor, Maine, a fake Undertaker hit the ring at the end of the show. And I clobbered this kid. I mean, I took him off the top rope. I flew through the air. I hooked his thighs because he was like 3 or 4 feet ahead of me. It was a kind of a small place, and he was already on the apron. And I caught him about mid-body, and I just took him right off, and he hit the floor really bad. And then I think a cop came over and took him away. But yeah, it was really simple. When I had my back turned, a guy in Bangor, Maine, just very simply climbed over the bicycle rack. He had a long black leather coat on. I think he had the hat, and I think he had an urn gimmick with him. And he just gets up because he wants to pay tribute to The Undertaker. Now, here's the problem after that, and this story's been told before, just not recently. The problem was, after I clobbered this kid, we find out that this kid is a special needs kid. I don't know if he was autistic or slow or what you call him, or if he was in fact disabled. But yeah, and apparently he played The Undertaker in a local skit, in his downtown area. So yeah, the night the fake Undertaker hit the ring, the kid meant no malice towards Undertaker. This wasn't like Edmonton where the guy jumped over the barrier while Eddie was up on the huge ladder and knocked out the ladder, and that Eddie kicked the crap out of him.
Oh man, that was the one I was actually going to ask you about, because I remember that. That was RVD and Eddie, right? And didn't he?
That was that's one of the more incredible stories in somebody hitting the ring in WWE history. I came on right after that. That was, I think, 99 or 98 in Edmonton, and it's kind of famous. And yeah. And just the way Eddie pulverized the guy. The guy was a big, the guy had some speed. He hit the ring, boom. I mean, he meant malice. This kid in Bangor, Maine, he meant no malice. He was just a stupid kid. But he got clobbered, man. And then the mother was mad at me for clobbering him. I said, lady, that's my job to clobber people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you gotta protect the guys. I mean, that's...
Got to protect the boys. Not that
have
they
there
ever appreciated it, but I had to protect them anyway.
and I'd assume you also had to protect them from themselves because, like Eddie, I'm sure if they see a guy hopping in their ring, hopping in their territory, they're going to take it upon themselves to remove him.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you should say that because I was actually talking the other night. I went to a show in Philly the other night. I went to Tommy Dreamer's House of Hardcore. Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to the Tommy Dreamer show, and I went because a friend of mine was in town, and she wanted to go, and she got tickets. So we went to the show because I don't go to shows. A, I'm not really interested. B, I'm not really interested. And C, I never want to be perceived like a mark. You know what I mean? It's just that I went to one show one time. I saw Kurt and the boys. I went backstage at TNA, and it was really terrific. I was, it was really kind of sweet. The boys really took care of me. And then I went to a WWE show, and I'll never go back. I felt a little humiliated. But I went to this House of Hardcore show, and it was kind of cool. So Steiner gets in the ring, and I was telling the person next to me that Steiner was really difficult. I had to go to Johnny Laurinaitis at one point and say, Johnny, you got to take care of Rick Steiner. And Rick is the one with the biceps, right?
Scotty, you mean with the blonde hair?
The blonde hair guy. That's Rick Scotty, or Scott? Yeah. See, I don't even know. So what Scotty would do at house shows is some kid would mouth off to him, and Scotty would go over the bicycle rack and go to choke the kid. And so I went to Johnny Johnny Laurinaitis. He was running talent at the time after JR, and I said, Johnny, you got to talk to Steiner. And he said, why? I said, because he's going into the audience and he's causing me problems. He said, Jimmy, Scott Steiner's an asshole. That's what Johnny Laurinaitis said, so we laughed. And I said, okay, well, you still got to talk to him. He goes, no, you talk to him. I go, yeah, I'm going to tell talent what to do and not to do. If I tell them not to do it, then they're going to do it every night. You know what I mean? He said, well, then tell them to do it. They tell them to go into the ring, use reverse psychology. I go, come on, man, you're killing me. Just talk to him and tell him not to. Because that's what he used to do. People would mouth off to him, and his gimmick was to go out after them. And then I would have a brawl on my hands. I didn't have a lot of security at a lot of these small places in these small towns. So, but yes, a lot of times, like, there were times when Kurt would go after people and Eddie went after people and after a guy in Winnipeg one night when the guy poured a beer on him. The guy didn't understand that you don't pour beer on wrestlers. Eddie went nuts. Eddie talked about his sobriety and he cried and you people don't understand me. It was really an emotional moment in Winnipeg one night. And then, of course, you got to, I can't talk about it, but you got to protect the boys from themselves, as you said, in other ways, guys getting fucked up on a bus in between cities, in Europe. And then you got to, make sure he gets kayfabed into the hotel so nobody sees him, all crazy and drunk and drugged up, So, yeah, there's a lot of situations. It was, an interesting life. I could tell you stories all day, but I won't.
You mentioned John Laurinaitis, and I'm just curious because some younger fans might only know him for being the Raw general manager, not the head of talent relations. Is he as devoid of charisma in person as he is on TV?
Actually, I'll tell you what. I think Johnny has more charisma in his personal life. Johnny's a very likable guy. He can also be very tough at times. But he does actually, he is more, listen, there are some people in life who should be on TV. There are some people who should be backstage. There are some people who should be doing the catering and making the coffee. Johnny is one of those people who belongs backstage running things. Johnny is not a TV person. He's this big, good-looking guy, a really tall, good-looking guy. He's got a great look, yet he is horrible in front of the camera. Not too many people in WWE history are as bad in front of the camera as Johnny is. But interpersonally, backstage, just a big, quiet guy. Hey, Jimmy, how you doing? With that stupid, soft voice of his. But he was a good guy. I enjoyed working with Johnny. Johnny was very fair to me. I came on, and basically Johnny was the guy who handled me, and Johnny was the guy I reported to. JR, it was, the tail end of JR. JR was only working with the talent, and then Johnny was running all the shows and everything. And then it just kind of slowly went to everything Johnny. And now I understand. I don't even know what Johnny does now. I guess Johnny's kind of quasi-talent now, or back to an agent. Because Triple H is doing his job now. So
I think
I
think he's an agent. I'm pretty sure Triple H has his position right now.
Yeah, Triple H is great. You know, people who know me know I'm a big Triple H fan. Triple H was always good to me in a very unassuming way. You know, he was always good to me. I like H. I always wish H the best. Great guy, really good guy to work with. Very kind, but not overboard about it. Just kind of like, you know, hey, Noonan, you need anything? You know, good guy. Always took care of me. Gentleman.
And speaking of Triple H, did you see? Now you started WWE. You said early 2000s.
2000.
Okay, you started in 2000. Okay, so this is before he even got married to Stephanie McMahon.
I caught the tail end of China.
Okay. Well, that could be
I didn't catch. Let's get this straight. I didn't catch China's tail end. Bada bing, bada boom. But I did catch I worked with China, so I caught the tail end of China and Steph. But that went south real fast. I wasn't privy to a lot of that information.
Right. Well, what I was going to ask you was, you know, Triple H has always been kind of like a natural leader, you know, a guy that likes to take charge. Even back then, did you see a guy that you could see down the road maybe being some type of executive in WWE or elsewhere?
Yes. That's the simple answer. Yes. H has a lot of the qualities of a leader. He's quiet. He has a natural, he has a, what's the word? He has this, he has an air about him, he's got
some
it.
swagger.
You know, it's these not even a swagger. It's an intangible. He has this profound gravity about him. You know, he's just, you know, he's a big guy. He's quiet. He knows when to speak. He knows when not to speak. He's a good listener. He's a good storyteller, but he doesn't bury anybody. Yeah, absolutely. He's got the intangibles that are hard to put into words in terms of, you know, of a guy, oh, do you think this guy will make it? I mean, he had already made it in the business. He was already, when I got there, he was probably already a 5-6 time world champion, and he had just come off. He was about to go into the WrestleMania where he got both belts. So what, against Jericho, I think?
Yeah, against Jericho,
Toronto.
WrestleMania 18. Yeah.
Yeah, in Toronto. So he was, you know, not far away from, you know, from real greatness. I mean, there's got to be a little more cachet having two belts at one time rather than one, and being the top dog. So yeah, but just, you know, it's like he was different. Rock was, you know, I caught the tail end of Rock and Steve, and Rock was really a rock star, and Steve was, we didn't know where Steve was. Steve was, you know, kind of like making a comeback but not making a comeback, and, you know, he had the neck issues, and Steve, I think by this time, was like a little more surly, and he didn't seem that happy to be there. So Triple H and Taker and guys like that, and the newer guys were the guys like everybody went to, and, you know, they were kind of like the head of the pack, the leader of the pack. Rock was off doing his own thing. He was only coming in once in a while, and Steve was in his own world at that point, you know.
Yeah. And you were mentioning too, you didn't grow up a wrestling fan. Obviously, you got involved with WWE. You know, worked alongside some of their biggest stars. Even though you weren't a wrestling fan per se, were there moments, you know, at some live events that you witnessed where you got goosebumps and said, you know what, I may not have grown up on this stuff, but I know this is a big moment, this is a big deal?
Well, I'm a sports fan. I just wrote something for KingLenny.com. I do a blog for KingLenny.com, and I just wrote something that I'm an insane sports mark. I'm just an insane sports mark. I started with the Green Bay Packers when I was a kid, you know, in the 60s. And then all of a sudden it's the New York Knicks, and then it's Ali and Frazier and Bob Beamon jumping over the moon, and, oh, you know, like an insane sports fan. So this is sports, and this is competition, and you look, when you're a sports fan, you look and you wait for the moments. Oh, sure, there were moments. I mean, that sure I would get goosebumps, or I knew that I was a part of history, or I knew this had never been done before. Absolutely. I mean, I knew who these guys were, but I just wasn't a fan of wrestling. I mean, if I had watched 100 hours of wrestling in my life before I got to WWE, that would be a lot. And in the big picture, 100 hours isn't a lot. But probably I was interested like most people. I used to open a bar on Saturday mornings in the early 80s. And I used to open the bar, and we didn't open until 12, but I'd get there at 10 o'clock, and I'd set up, and I'd be cutting fruit and doing bar things, getting ready for the day. And there was a show on TV called Superstars. And I'd watch the show, and there'd be this guy, Magnificent Morocco, and I was like, man, that guy is cool, you know. And then I would see Doink the Clown, R.I.P. Matt Bourne, by the way.
Matt Bourne was a good dude.
Yeah, I heard he was a bad motherfucker too. I heard a lot. I heard he was tough, you know, for a guy who had the persona of a clown. I heard he was a tough guy. Anyway, and I'm watching this guy, Randy Macho Man Savage, who's, you know, building this winning streak and flying through the air, and this crazy hair, and this is before he became, you know, the top dog in WWE, and you know, he's flying off the top rope onto guys outside on the floor outside the ring, and yeah, you know, and Andre the Giant, of course, and King Kong Bundy, the big guys, Big John Studd, you know, I was always interested in that. So I knew who they were. I just really wasn't a fan. But I was caught up in the first WrestleMania, the first, second, and third WrestleMania. You know, I live in the Northeast. I live in a media. I live in New York City. I live in a media-hungry area, and they cover that stuff. And sure, I was a fan, but I just not a fan per se. I mean, I never went to shows. I think I took my son to a show in the Meadowlands in like 83 or 84, and I think the main event was Sergeant Slaughter and Bob Backlund, maybe, or maybe the Iron Sheik or something like that. So yeah, you get to appreciate it. You get to appreciate it, absolutely.
And you're a New York guy. You just mentioned the Knicks. I don't know if you know this. The Knicks just re-signed J.R. Smith.
I did not know that. J.R. Smith had one of the most incredible years this year. He really did. I love Bargnani. Bargnani, is that how you say his name?
Yeah, I love his offensive game, but he can't.
I am a huge Bargnani fan. I had him in a lot of fantasy leagues over the years. Not last year. I didn't do well with him, but I've done very well with him over the years. I think he's an excellent complement. I was sorry to see them. I think they got rid of Novak for him, right? Steve Novak.
Yeah. I mean,
but his 3-pointers will pretty much offset, and JR being re-signed, they'll pretty much offset Steve Novak's 3-pointers, and I just think he's more of a savvy world-class basketball player than Steve Novak is. I think it's a nice touch, and I think the Knicks are going to be tough one of these days. You know.
I would too, but I mean, one of their problems was rebounding, especially when they went up against Roy Hibbert and the Pacers. I mean, they got out-rebounded the entire series, and when I look at Bargnani, I don't see a guy that's a rebound machine that can complement a guy like, you know, Tyson Chandler. I mean, you have Amare, and you have Bargnani. You're going to have to start one of them. One of them is going to be pissed off that they're not starting and coming off the bench, and neither are huge rebounding or defensive threats.
Well, they weren't in Toronto. I mean, he wasn't in Toronto. So maybe, just maybe, you know, you got to let a basketball player be a basketball player. Maybe they were asking him to carry too much of the offensive load in Toronto. So maybe we're going to see a guy who can average 5 to 7 rebounds. I mean, isn't he almost 7 feet tall?
I would hope a 7-footer could average 10 rebounds, my friend. But
but that's asking too much, especially a guy who's got a 3-point stroke like that too. I mean, you're talking about a guy who doesn't exactly play under the boards; he's outside. But maybe in a different setup, maybe we can expect a little more. We got to give. It's like anything else. You never know what's going to happen, and you got to give it time. But J.R. Smith is awesome. I mean, he had a couple of those games when Carmelo was out, and
Do you remember that one game towards the end of the season? He went like 9 out of 10 from 3 points. He was unbelievable.
He was awesome. In the playoffs, he was a
good
little
basketball player.
In the playoffs, he was a little inconsistent, but I think when Mike Woodson's able to keep him in line, you know what I mean? Like he's a guy that can keep you in the game, but he also keeps the other team in the game. But that's why people love him. He's exciting to watch. You know, he's brash. He's got the attitude, and he's actually a Freehold boy like myself. So hopefully,
Freehold, New Jersey. We gotta build it in New York. I am so over LeBron right now. I love LeBron, and I followed him in high school and stuff, but I'm so over it. You know, this is just, it's too much LeBron. You know, guys who really deserved it years ago, I wish they got as much media attention as LeBron. I wish Oscar Robertson and Wilt Chamberlain and Pete Maravich and people like that, I wish there was the media back then like it is now, and maybe we would hear more about other guys being so great. I'm just so sick of being over LeBron. And what happens is if we do have a superior team in New York, that will help because a lot of the media comes out of New York and Los Angeles. So it will help. I'm kind of sick of the Heat right now.
Oh man, I am too, and I am too. And
although last year, not this year, but last year or the year before, I can't remember. I enjoyed watching them do well. I think my favorite series in the last few years is the series where they lost in 7 games. What did they lose 2 years ago? They
lost to the Mavericks.
Yeah, I really enjoyed. That was a really, really good. And I think in a lot of ways that showed how great LeBron was because LeBron did so well that series, and he didn't have much support. But I thought, and I will leave it at this. We don't need to talk basketball, but I thought that the 2 teams who played in the NBA championship this year, I thought they were the 2 worst final NBA teams in history.
Real? Hold up. You're talking about the Heat and the Spurs? Those are the 2.
Yeah, I mean, come on, man.
Those are the 2 best teams in the league.
They were the 2 best teams in the league, and they were the 2 worst teams in history in a final. You can't put Larry Bird's teams with McHale and those guys, even Jordan's teams.
Hold up. But how are the Heat one of the worst finals teams ever when they had a 27-game winning streak, the second longest winning streak in NBA history?
I think it tells you more about the league than anything else.
Wow.
I mean, I think it tells you. I think there's maybe a little too much parity right now, and I don't think a lot of these guys. Come on, you think Kawhi Leonard or whatever his name is could have started for any of the Boston Celtics championship teams?
But it is a different. I mean, come on, though. It's a different.
No. You got your stars, and then there's a big drop off after Tony Parker and Duncan. There's a huge drop off in talent. And after even Bosh. I mean, Bosh was terrible. He had 1 or 2 good games in the final, maybe 3. But after Wade and LeBron, come on, Mario Chalmers.
Oh, so everybody needs some complimentary players.
Mario Chalmers couldn't make the bench of any of the championship Boston teams. Come on. Oh, I got you, huh? You're kind of riled up right now.
It's all good. It's all good. You know what? If you want, as long as you don't diss the Knicks, we're good. So that's all.
No, I love them. I'm a Knicks fan. You kidding me? Love the Knicks.
And before
I think Knicks talent-wise across the board are probably the best team in basketball across the board.
Yeah, and before we get back to wrestling, since you're a long-time New York sports fan, I gotta ask you: do you feel like Willis Reed is overrated and gets too much credit for the Knicks title over Walt Frazier?
No. Willis was the guy. I mean, Walt was Walt. Walt was the guard, and Walt was the guy who runs things. But Willis was the guy. I mean, it just goes to show you one of the greatest, moments in NBA history is what? When Willis glimpsed out of the tunnel. And the whole attitude of the Garden and the whole attitude of the Knicks changed that night because he was their leader. He wasn't necessarily their number 1 player, but he was their leader. And he did so much. Everybody saw what he did with so little. He was going up against Nate Thurman, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Wes Unseld every night, and he was apparently not as big as everybody says he was. He was probably closer to 6'8" than he was 6'10". You know? And he didn't have a lot of talent, but he had intangibles. He had the intangibles. He was a leader. So I think anything that Willis Reed got over the years, I think he deserved, and I think he was a natural leader. I think he was the Triple H. Okay, let's do this. I think he was the Triple H of the New York Knicks. He wasn't the best, and he wasn't the biggest drawer. That was for Walt Frazier, but he was the glue that held the team together.
Good comparison. Very, very, very nice.
Not bad, huh? Bring it back to a little wrestling action.
I'm sure our mutual friend John Double J Johnson will appreciate your kind words about the Heat too.
I'm a huge 1969. I mean, one of the greatest moments for a young basketball player. I was 11 years old, and that was a gift. I think I cried. I I listened to it on the radio, and I watched it later on TV. But yeah, that was huge for a young kid in northern New Jersey at the time. The Knicks winning, huge.
Of course, and one sport that's starting to become pretty huge, has been huge the last few years, is mixed martial arts. Although for some reason, New York State has not legalized it. Yeah, the only state in the freaking union that hasn't legalized MMA. But that's a whole other topic for another day. Over time, obviously, with the MMA boom, particularly that came 2005, 2006-ish, and has pretty much continued, and you see what the UFC is now with Fox Sports and everything. When did you decide to pursue some combat sports-related training to add to your experience? Because you are an old-school guy. You are, old-school brawler. Obviously, most people wouldn't mess with you if they're smart enough. But when did you decide to add some combat sports training to your security repertoire?
Well, when you're growing up, I'm 55 years old now, so let's say 10 years, just say around 10 years ago, it started becoming really popular. Guys did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in their basement with their father. Maybe their father knew something, and he was saying, this wasn't common. We didn't know about all these disciplines. We didn't know about all these names. It's almost like something you did. And then, you told your friends you did it, and you said, oh, you better not mess with that kid. He knows karate. Like when we were growing up, it was like, we always wondered about it, and it was there was this mystique about martial arts and all this stuff. And then you start seeing these tough man competitions in the, late 90s and early 2000s, and Butterbean and Kimbo Slice. And all these guys are doing this underground fighting, and they're, guys are getting mauled. And then all of a sudden it becomes a profession. It becomes a professional league of sorts, and Pride and all this stuff. You can't watch Pride from the 90s and early 2000s and not say, oh my God, that's what I should be doing. I got to stop bench pressing and squatting and doing bicep work, and I got to start doing a little more all-around sports training, at least some boxing. It was a phenomenal time, and continues to be a phenomenal time in history. All this MMA stuff, and then and I grew up in bars in northern New Jersey. I'm in recovery for 26 years, and I'm in recovery for a reason, because I used to be a bad guy. I used to look for trouble. So I'm an old-school bar brawler, and I fought with a lot of tough guys over the years. I ran with a really tough crowd. So I'm an old-school bar brawler, and so you can handle yourself in all situations. Where do you see the most damage where do you see the most people getting hurt? You see the most people getting hurt on TMZ when somebody who doesn't know how to fight just starts wailing on them. You know what I mean? Guys who do, mixed martial arts can really hurt each other, but they know, they do it in a responsible way, if that makes sense. And now, we have referees and, calling the action before somebody gets really hurt, but I think this is just my way of saying after a while you can't help but get involved in it. So then I just started there was a company called CDT, Controlled Directional Takedown. after I was with WWE, I started practicing some more CDT. Because in my business, you can't fight people. There's no fighting. There's taking them down. You got to take them down. Boom. No matter how big they are, whether they weigh 180 or 500 pounds, whether they're a national champion wrestler or a big fat kid, you got to take them down immediately. We're not in the brawling business anymore. So you got to learn that stuff. So I kind of did some controlled directional takedown stuff. Know how to take people down. I got really good at it. And then what you do is then you find the discipline you like. For me, the most practical thing was called Krav Maga, which is just very, very, very simple striking, very simple self-defense, and very, very simple takedown stuff. I'd love to be doing all those other things. I'd love to be doing, a little bit of Taekwondo, a little bit of karate, and a little bit of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and some wrestling. But after all, I'm a 55-year-old guy getting down, up and off on that, it's painful sometimes, no matter what shape you're in, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And what is the biggest misconception you think about working in security?
Oh, misconception. That we're all tools who are trying to make your life miserable. You the fan. When in fact, all we're doing is we're doing our job. Everybody likes to pick on security. There's a saying in our business is that shit runs downhill and it stops at security. And that's the way it feels sometimes. You're in a no-win situation. Everybody hates you right away because you're in between yourself. You're in between the person who wants to get to the talent, who wants to socialize with them, who wants their autograph, who wants to shake their hand, who wants to take up their time getting pictures with them so they can show their friends, who wants to take out their phone and adjust their phone while they're waiting for a picture. You can't do that, when you're a celebrity. You've got things to do. You got meetings to keep. And I'm in between them, so everybody hates me right away. I'm the bad guy. But, we're not bad guys. We're just guys doing our job.
Yeah, I agree. Believe me, I've been to a bunch of wrestling shows too, and just WWE, non-WWE. For every good fan that you see that's like normal and
Fred? Fred, you there?
here we go. And we're going to get Jimmy back on. Yeah, I was just saying Google Hangout's been taking a crap today. If you guys saw the Sheamus versus Fandango match on Monday Night Raw and had that bad taste in your mouth after seeing that, and the Miz versus Ryback back-to-back, good Lord. Then, yeah, man, that's kind of the bad taste I've had. Try to get this working, but, we finally got it working. We're going to get Jimmy back on. He's been an awesome guest. Stay tuned. All right. And no, I'm not giving out his phone number publicly, so don't ask me to do that. He will whoop my ass. All right. Let's see right here. Okay, knock on wood. Let's get this going one more time.
Hello.
Hey, Jimmy, you're back on the air. We lost you there for a second, man. What happened? Did you get, jumped by Fandango or something?
Yes, Fandango jumped me, and Fandango and Beth Phoenix decided to just start pounding on me.
Fair enough. Well, before you got cut off, I was just saying that, I don't know if you heard me before. You were mentioning, I asked you about the biggest misconception about security. I heard your answer. And I mentioned that, I've been to a lot of wrestling shows. I've covered a lot of wrestling shows. And for every good fan that's in the building, you always get a couple fans that are, quite frankly, are pricks. And they like to pick on people. They like to pick on security. I've seen it firsthand. And a lot of times, some of the excuses of these guys is, well, he looks mean. And my argument, to counter that is, isn't security supposed to be firm and look kind of intimidating so you don't do stupid stuff?
Well, isn't that, sure. I'm a natural deterrent. A person of size, a person of substance, a person of a certain look is going to be a natural deterrent for bad behavior. And then you get the people who, A, don't care, or B, or, have had a little alcohol and, want to flex their beer muscles. Or people who are just stupid and then they want to mess with security. I always, in my security meetings, would tell the guys in the arenas, I'd meet with them and I'd say, listen, one thing you need to know about me, I am not part of the show, okay? So if some guy starts talking to me, do me a favor, nip it in the bud and say to the guy at ringside who's chattering about me, security, saying, listen, he's not part of the show, leave him alone. And then what I would say to them, and I said, and I will do likewise. If I have a fan who's breaking your chops and I see them, I will protect you. You protect me, and I will protect you so that I don't have to get in it, because anything I do is going to be reported on the internet. You know what I mean? Oh, the big bad security guy did something terrible last night, during the Orton match. He yelled at a fan and threw somebody out. And I didn't like being on Lords of Pain and WrestleView.com and some, diva dirt. I hated that. And frequently I would be, because Randy would tell somebody off and then they would come after him and then I would have to go clobber them, or, I would say some terrible things to them and it would get reported that I motherfucked somebody, in Peoria. You know what I mean? It's not, it's not a perfect setup. It's very difficult sometimes. You have to keep the corporate balance. You have to protect, WWE's intellectual property, and you got to keep the corporate balance because, at any given time you're working for a Fortune 500 company, the biggest sports entertainment juggernaut on the planet. On the other hand, you're dealing on a daily basis, face to face, with people who don't like you. So it is an extremely difficult position. One of the nicest things that one of the talent ever said to me was, I forget who it was, but they said, Jimmy, you navigate a very, how did he put it? He said, you navigate the waters of a very complex backstage culture, and you do it so well. Because it's not just about the 3 hours of the show. It's about the 8 to 10 hours backstage and in the arena before the show, and then the airport afterwards, and the hotel afterwards, and the local steak and brew afterwards. You know what I mean? It's really a difficult job. I'll be honest with you, and I'm not putting myself over. Nobody on the planet Earth had a job like me and Jimmy Tillis, my partner, did. Nobody did what we do. We did some very, very unique stuff. We wore a lot of hats, and I think we did it with aplomb. I did it for 8 years, and Jimmy did it for about 12. Jimmy, I think, retired about 2 years ago. But yeah, it's a very complex type of situation.
And of course, the obvious question here, and if you don't mind me asking you, why are you no longer with WWE? Was it just a mutual agreement? Was it something where they said, hey, man, we're going to go in a different direction? What exactly happened?
Yeah, there was a guy in the office. So here I am on the road. I went to Stanford, I think, twice or 3 times in 8 years. And I'm on the road. And people in the office, no matter what they say, you can't come out once a week to a pay-per-view or twice a month to a TV, a Raw or SmackDown, and say that you know what goes out on the road. I don't care if you've been with the company 30 years. You can't do 1 or 2 shows a month and then tell me that you know the road and you know the intricacies of the road, okay? But, so I reported to this guy in the office named Rich Herring. And Rich is an older guy, and he's a quirky. He's got his own stuff going on. I'm not going to talk bad about him. I usually either call him RH or the guy in the office. And maybe at one time or another I called him the asshole in the office. I'm not sure. I actually, for a while, liked him, but so he's telling me, the things I should be doing. When he took over us, security, me and Jimmy, we were promised that there was going to be no micromanaging, and then all of a sudden there's some micromanaging going on, and apparently he's getting all these letters from all these places and all these calls about what a bad guy I am. Apparently a lot of people were complaining about me, which I think is horse crap. But and after a while it just gets so old. I mean, here you are, you've been out on the road, you did 5 shows, then you left for Europe, and then you did 14 shows in Europe. And then you finally get home on a Wednesday, okay? But you got to be back there on Friday for a house show. So you got 2 days off, and then you're sitting on your couch and you're just about to fall asleep after the toughest tour you've ever been on, and your phone rings. And it's some guy in the office wanting to know what happened in Winnipeg the other night. And then you say, well, what do you mean what happened in Winnipeg the other night? They said, well, Eddie got thrown into the bicycle rack by Chris Benoit, and he hurt a kid. Okay, that's what happens with bicycle rack. Bicycle rack moves when 300-pound men go into them. And little kids get hurt sometimes. But the little kid had a scratch on his head. I took him backstage. I got him autographs. I bought him ice cream. I rubbed his mom's belly. What do you want me to do? Well, why didn't you write a report? Because it was a piece of bicycle rack and a 10-year-old kid. People get hit by bicycle rack every night. I can't spend all my downtime writing reports. Shit happens. The agents know it. I know. The talent knows it. Come on, man. So it started really getting old. I reported, Johnny Laurinaitis would make it, very clear to me that I reported to him, and then this guy, in the office would make it very clear that I reported to him. You know what I mean? So I was in a quandary. After a while, it just got old. I had a really, really bad attitude. Everybody knew I was miserable, and he knew in the office I was miserable, and I got a letter from him one day, 3 months before my contract was up, that this will be my last 90 days at WWE, and, they're not going to renew my contract. And the funny thing is, that was basically the end, and then Johnny heard about it, Laurinaitis, and he came to me and goes, well, why didn't you come to me? I can make this all go away. And I said, Johnny, if there's like one person in the company who doesn't believe in me or doesn't, who wants me gone, I don't want to be here. There were no problems with talent. There were no problems with, there was a problem with one talent. There were no problems with Steph and Hunter and Vince and the producers. Everybody loved me and everybody wanted me there. But there was this one jerk off in the office who had a problem with me. And, quite frankly, if I'm not 100% appreciated, I don't want to be there anyway. So it might have been a mistake, but maybe not. Who knows? Life takes strange turns sometimes, and we make plans and God laughs at them. So you just never know what's the right thing and the wrong thing sometimes. But there was that bottom line is there was a problem with a guy in the office.
Now let's just say, hypothetically speaking, they called you up and they said, Jimmy, we need you back. We need somebody that knows what the hell they're doing when it comes to security. Would you be open to coming back, or are you kind of done being on the road all the time?
Well, people who go on the road and stay on the road have a road mentality, and I have a road mentality. The road, as difficult as it is, can be glorious and wonderful. Flying first class, staying in the best hotels in the world, meeting interesting people, fucking rats. Oh my God, did I say that?
I don't know if everybody heard you, but
it can be a lot of fun. Now, if I'll tell you what, if Triple H called me tonight and said, I need, do me a favor, I need you for some stuff, I'd go in a minute. Now, do I want to go back to WWE per se? No. But if somebody like Steph or Hunter or Vince or Kevin Dunn called me, or even Johnny, and said, listen, we'd like you to come out once a week and take a look at some things and help us out. Oh, I would do it in a minute. It would never, ever happen, but I would do it in a minute. Absolutely.
You know, you worked for Vince McMahon for a lot of years. He is one of the most complex people I've ever seen. There's there's the good side of him, there's the bad side of him, there's the side of him that's portrayed on TV. And if you watch this DVD McMahon that they released like a few years ago, it seems like he kind of walks a fine line between the guy you see on TV and the guy in real life that's a grandfather, a father, and a businessman. What do you feel like is the most misunderstood thing about Vince McMahon? Like, what's something you could tell us about him that we don't know that would maybe, I don't know if change our opinion of him, but maybe kind of give you an idea of what he's really like beyond the camera?
You know, that's kind of I mean, that's a really, really tough. It's not an unfair question. It's a tough question. Vince is quirky. Vince is moody. Vince is eccentric. You know, Vince is Vince. What you see is what you get. All those people, the top of their business, the geniuses of if you will, of the world. You know, let's face it. Any guy who conceived this idea of one gigantic wrestling entity and then saw it through to fruition to make it a multi-billion-dollar, you know, business. No matter what you say about him, he is a genius. Donald Trump, for what he did, is a genius. The Gateses of the world are geniuses. The people who got, you know, the Robert De Niro in his own way. He may not be intellectually a genius, but he is a genius at what he does. Meryl Streep. And that's Vince. You know, that's Vince right there. He's a little moody, but you can't, at least the way I saw it, but you can't be doing a day-to-day show seen by, you know, tens of millions of people without being a little moody and unhappy at times. And Vince was so funny. You never knew what you were going to get. I mean, a lot of times, I'd say 80% of Vince's arrival at the arena on Sunday morning for pay-per-view and on Monday morning for Raw, or the night before at the hotel where I would see them, you know, 40% of the time he would completely ignore me. Like I'd walk over to the door and I'd open it and he'd be the first one out. He would completely ignore me. Other times he'd say, "Hey, Noonan," and then other times I would get, every time I got something different, and it was usually severe. It was usually like a real powerful handshake or not even a nod. And then sometimes you look at you like he was pissed off at you, just because he was pissed off in general about the show the night before. I saw a lot of stuff, but so in terms of changing, you know, somebody's opinion about him, I'm not sure, you know, I could say anything. But I mean, you get it. You get that he's a formidable man, a genius. He's a very, very special man. If Vince McMahon didn't make it in the wrestling business, Vince McMahon would have been famous at something else, trust me.
And he would say overall he treated you well. I mean, he did fly you around the world. And as you mentioned before, you did have some fun.
I had a lot of fun. I mean, I had a lot of fun sitting. You know, we grew up in Jersey in the 60s and 70s. I went to school in Rutherford, New Jersey, at a place called St. Mary's in Rutherford. I had 6 sisters, a mom and a dad, and 6 sisters, no brothers, and we were poor. We feigned middle class, you know, we faked middle class, and we were lower middle class. So here's, you know, I always joke about little Jimmy Noonan from Rutherford, New Jersey, you know, who rode the bus and walked and had nothing his whole life. And now I'm sitting in first class flying around the world, staying at the Conrad Hotel in Bangkok, Thailand, staying at the Hilton in New York City in the presidential suite. It's pretty impressive for a kid to grow up with nothing and then have, you know, all these wonderful things while making a nice paycheck and hanging out with quasi-celebrities all day. It didn't suck. And that was all because of a guy named Vince McMahon. I mean, you know, did he hire me? No. But basically, you know, my stock answer, as I said to you a couple of days ago, is, you know, I would never have anything bad to say about Vince McMahon because I saw the world, the entire world, on Vince McMahon's dime. And for that, I am very grateful.
And we actually have a couple fan questions here. This one from Fan of Everything 94. I'll rephrase this question because he said, Jimmy, has there ever been a moment where you've thrown people out of the arena? I'm assuming you have more than you can remember, so I'll rephrase this question for you. Was there ever a night where you didn't have to throw somebody out of the arena?
Oh, yeah, many nights we didn't throw people out. There would be nights. Listen, when you're doing a show in St. Louis, you know, St. Louis is one of the ground zeros for the wrestling business, right? I mean, in terms of historical, when you do a show in St. Louis some nights, whether it's a house show at that big arena or it's a live TV, those fans have it down. Those fans know more about the business than I do. They very rarely get over, you know, they cheer, they drink, they have fun. They very rarely do something stupid. St. Louis, Oklahoma City, for some reason, always went very well. You know, so I don't know, but you know, for the most part, there were many, many nights. There were less nights that I threw people out than you know, more often. You know what I'm saying? There were, I would say, maybe 10% of the shows I actually had to ask somebody to leave, and it was usually because they wouldn't take off a WWF T-shirt at ringside after I, you know, brought them a WWE T-shirt, and was very nice to them, or they dropped the F-bomb, or they spit, or something like that, you know. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, we threw people out all the time. The basic thing was we had to protect our FCC license on live TV, and we had to protect our intellectual property. So oftentimes a guy, you know, opposite the camera would have a sign that said, you know, Vince McMahon sucks dick. And I would say, dude, you know, give security that sign.
He said, no, I'll put it down. I go, no, you got to give it.
Security sign because I can't have that on TV. I'm going to, you know, you've already been on TV. And if you hold it up on TV, you're going right out. And then he would have a sign under that you would say, you know, fuck you, WWE, or security sucks. And then we'd just go over and get him right out of there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Somebody actually snuck in a sign, I don't know if it was this past week or the week before. 3 people, and it said, Cena has the clap.
Yeah, that's got to go, you know. That's got to go. Anything negative about the talent,
it goes right away. I mean, unfortunately, this is not free speech. You know, it doesn't work that way. Even at those horrible ECW shows at the Hammerstein Ballroom, you know, when we were doing our ECW gimmick, you know, even we would let a lot of stuff slide those nights, but even those nights we took signs that were unfavorable to the intellectual property of WWE.
Right, and one guy, we were talking about like unfavorable signs and all that. There was a guy a few weeks back who I guess probably has no life that was wearing a "I'm a Chris Benoit guy" T-shirt, as opposed to you know a play on a Paul Heyman guy T-shirts.
Yeah, that's gonna go.
Yeah,
that's definitely gonna go because you're taking a direct. That would be perceived to the producers and the directors as a direct shot at WWE and bringing up, you know, the darkest side in the history of WWE.
And I was
reminding people
subconsciously of murder and mayhem.
Right, and I'm assuming you were there that night for Monday Night Raw?
I left the night before. I'm sorry, I left the month before it happened.
Oh, okay, all right. But I'd imagine you were you were probably around Benoit many times.
Around Benoit? I traveled with Chris.
Oh, okay.
There were nights I traveled far and wide with Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero in cars together.
I mean,
we ate together, we traveled together. Not all the time, but I spent a lot of time with Chris. Chris was one of my buddies.
And Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry for for your losses there, man. And I don't
Yeah.
know if you I don't know if you read about it online. Nancy Benoit's sister, Chris Benoit's son-in-law, recently did an interview, talking about it, and she kind of she kind of has a good. I mean, she's 6 years removed from the tragedy, obviously, but she's kind of got like sort of a positive attitude about it, and it was just real interesting to me. I mean, she said that to some extent, she kind of insinuated that she sort of kind of forgives Chris because Chris just wasn't the same at the end. And the doctor, I believe the coroner or the guy that did the autopsy, even told her that he probably would have been dead within 10 months if that tragedy didn't happen. I mean, being around him, did you ever feel like there was anything off about him, or did you always just kind of chalk that up as Chris being Chris and him being intense and caring about his craft?
Okay, when you answer questions like this, you have to be careful because it's the fair thing to do. The fair thing to do, as somebody who was close to Chris and near him for a long time, and up till 3 months before he unfortunately went home and killed himself and his family. So.
And by the way, I'm not asking you to predict, like to say,
no,
oh,
no. You were very clear. I just want to, I would never give a frivolous answer here because this is where the stuff gets serious, and this is where this stuff, how kids say these days, it gets real. This
Right.
is very close to a lot of people, including me, and you have to, there's a certain amount of responsibility. Okay, with that said, everybody knew there was something not quite right with Chris. Chris was very, very, very quiet. Chris was, now, first of all, that's who Chris was. Chris was a quiet, unassuming guy. But he was very quiet at the end. Chris was extremely intense. He was always like that, but he was particularly intense at the end. Chris and Eddie, up until Eddie died, they were fighting all the time. Chris was a bit of a perfectionist. He wanted things to be perfect. He wanted Eddie, to be part of his workout regimen and his stuff. And, he'd break Eddie's balls and Eddie would break his balls. And then at the end, Chris was like surly all the time. And I mean, he was always a good guy, but, Chris was not a guy you talk to. He was alone. He was off to the side. He was. I think if it was one of those things, let's put it this way: if it was one of those things where somebody came to you and they somehow said, "Jimmy, give me 5 guys on the roster that you think could potentially something bad happen to or die in the next 10 years, who would they be?" I think Chris would be on that list. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like Chris is like, the guys who had a history and everybody knew of, or the name showed up on a list of steroid use and, they like their alcohol and they like to drink and maybe they, used other things and they were taking a few painkillers and they were overdoing it with the Vicodin or whatever. And some of them were really out, like Kurt and Eddie were kind of out there about it. I mean, you knew something was not quite right. The other thing is, if you know anything about top athletes, a lot of people don't know the top athletes frequently because of the way they train. And I'm not talking about bodybuilders. I'm talking about athletes like LeBron James. I'm not saying LeBron James falls under this category, but a lot of them have enlarged hearts. It's just the way the heart manages the body. It's not necessarily healthy, but sometimes it's not necessarily that unhealthy. A lot of them, because of the strain they put on their bodies, have enlarged hearts. Okay, so then you take anabolic steroids, and that only enlarges your heart further. And then you take all the drugs that, some people take in their respective businesses, and that only makes the heart larger and larger and larger. So, that's what happened to Eddie, and that's probably, if she's correct, that sounds like, what happened with Chris. The thing about one of the things that she said I wrote was that she said she thought she disagreed with the concussion theory Am I correct? Isn't that what she said?
Yes, I believe she. Yeah, I believe she did say she disagreed with that and thought it was, due to steroid.
Roid rage, yeah. And I 100%, even though I have no idea, I 100% disagree with her. If you saw him, if you saw the bumps this guy took, and know a little about athletes and know a little about bodies and know a little about head trauma, you can figure out that this guy, everything combined, but a lot of head trauma. I would say she's 100% wrong.
I mean, I'd probably say. I mean, it could be. I mean, you got to remember too. I mean, the combination. I think that's the biggest thing. It's the combination. It's the fact that he, had testosterone to the gills, on top of the brain damage, on top of whatever he was taking, on top of drinking whatever and the drugs and stuff like that. I mean, that's a lethal concoction right there for anybody, no matter what they end up doing. Whether it be to somebody else.
I mean, five bottles of wine. 5 bottles of wine didn't help. Yeah.
Yeah. No, of course.
And who knew what he was taking recreationally? I mean, I don't know what Chris was taking.
Yeah.
Do I imagine Chris was taking
like you said, the cocktail? Yeah, absolutely. Chris was taking some pretty forward thinking, crazy shit. They were all. All of them are on a lot of stuff. It's very difficult not to. Listen, these guys. A lot of people don't realize that these guys don't take steroids to get big sometimes. One of the things the steroids do is the anabolic steroids, they heal the body quicker. And these guys are taking bumps 5 days a week. They're taking bumps over 250 shows a year. The human body's not made to do that. And they're afraid to take time off because they're afraid to lose their spot. They lose their spot, they're going to lose their money. They lose their money, they're going to lose
their house and their private school for the kids.
It's a tough business. It's a rough business. But it's not unlike the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball.
So let me counter that then.
Okay.
Do you think that wrestling should have an off season, or at the very least maybe have more breaks for the boys?
It doesn't matter. It'll never happen.
Do I think so? Yeah. Yeah, but
it'll never
happen. Never. It's too big. It's gotten
so big. And, Vince is another one. Vince has board people, board of directors that he's got to answer to. The profit's got to stay up. The money's got to stay up, blah, 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 blah. Do I think there should be? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a reason guys break their necks, and there's a reason they get, detached triceps and biceps and quadriceps and oh my God, it's incredible. A lot of these guys are working with concussions often.
Yeah. The bright side, I'd say, if there's one good thing to come out of the Benoit tragedy, I think, is the fact that there has been increased awareness about concussions. I mean, Chris Lewinsky, with the Legacy Institute, has definitely been leading that cause. I mean, especially now with the NFL as well, kind of paying more attention to concussions. You see with WWE recently with Dolph Ziggler and Fandango. I mean, those guys they weren't even flown out for like 2-3 weeks, if not more, after they suffered concussions. I feel like, obviously that was a terrible mark on the business, a terrible tragedy, especially for somebody that was your friend and his family and everything like that. But would you agree that there was at least some positive to come out of it? Increased awareness, and it forced people to talk about issues in pro wrestling and sports that otherwise maybe they would have kind of swept under the rug.
Yeah, but maybe it was done. Too quickly. I mean, this is one of the things I didn't like. I see how it was necessary, but do you remember turning on the TV 6 weeks later and Triple H had gotten soft, he had lost a lot of his muscularity, and Ken Kennedy had lost all his muscularity, and now they look like normal guys, like normal wrestlers.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that thing where like 2 or 3 months later, everybody's going on TV and you go, oh my God, what happened to him? Everybody got softer and they didn't look like wrestlers anymore.
Well, except
Dave and Cena. Dave and Cena seemed like the 2 guys who, but I think Triple H had to do the right thing and be a leader and come off the gas. and I remember Triple H and Ken Kennedy. I think I saw Matt Hardy. Matt looked terrible. A lot of these guys look. Mysterio got fat. I mean, so many guys look terrible. So I think there was a different way to handle it, you know. But sure, yeah. Is the WWE different since the Benoit tragedy? Absolutely. I don't necessarily agree with the whole PG era. I think it's hurt the business, but you know, if it makes Vince, $900 million instead of $1 billion, who cares? You know, he can handle it.
Right, and also you got to remember too, with the Attitude Era, they lost a lot of sponsors because they crossed the line a little too much. You know what I mean? So for them to go PG, I think. I mean, if you look at I don't know if you followed WCW in the late '90s, but I mean, WCW had some good angles. They had good to great matches. I mean, obviously you had the occasional crap, which eventually led to its downfall. But I mean, WCW was TV PG, and it was perfectly fine. And when it was done right, you felt like you were watching just a good wrestling show and suspending your disbelief. I think the problem these days with PG, and not so much right now, but maybe at the beginning, like 08, 09, when they first started doing it, is that they strayed off way too much to like TVG, to the point where it felt like you were watching Nickelodeon as opposed to just a show that happens to have a PG rating and maybe less cussing.
Yeah, you know what I loved about WCW? And more, premeditated, and Foley and Stone Cold and Rocky and Taker and Kane, and then bringing up Kurt, in the late '90s. But man, WCW had magic going on there for a while, and it's too bad they couldn't afford. I guess the contracts is what killed them. I don't know, but too bad they couldn't afford to keep it going. But you know what I mean? They just kept throwing stuff against the wall, and it.
Well, the thing is, it was the contracts. It was the fact that they gave the boys way too much creative control, and sometimes you gotta police the boys. And also, I mean, they spent and Brian Alvarez is actually coming out with the new revised edition of the Death of WCW with Artie Reynolds. I mean, they spent so much money. I mean, I think they spent. If I'm not mistaken, there was one time where they spent like a $250,000 to bring in James Brown unadvertised on Nitro. Now, check that out, and then multiply that by like 10 or like 100. I mean, it's like they spent so much money on everything. I mean, a logo, a new logo change that they didn't need, a set change they didn't need. Never mind the fact that the booking, under Vince Russo stunk. Like high hell, and Bischoff lost his touch. I mean. There was just a lot of things. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, if you think about it, they were profitable in '97. I believe they were profitable in '98, and then '99. I think they had maybe been like from '99 to 2000, if I'm not mistaken. I might be slightly exaggerating here. They had like an 80 to 90% drop in like profits. It was ridiculous.
Okay, but isn't it kind of interesting that during I think it was the 2 years that they made money. Was when the two things I talked about. I mean, I don't know exactly, but Goldberg coming up, and you were totally interested. You were totally, into that 173, win streak and his power. And Hogan as a heel. I mean, Hogan as a heel was some pretty NWO stuff, and you didn't know, which Razor Ramon and which match you were going to get that night. Do you remember that? That was kind of magical there for a little while, and then the rating went to crap, and then
well, you know what too? Also,
the Ultimate Warrior stuff went south,
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that was the problem is that, and you see, I don't know if you watch TNA at all, but like you see it with TNA a little bit. At least you saw it like back in the day with the main event, the original main event Mafia. It's like the NWO started out great, then it got out of hand, and then after 2-3 years of NWO, it just kind of disbanded. Like they didn't have any kind of blow-off match. Like they didn't have like WCW versus NWO, and WCW wins and NWO disbands. It just kind of died a slow, cruel, and non-monumental death.
Well, how about this? How about one night I'm in Boston. It's I think it's late 2001. I really can't remember. And you already have Rocky, you already got Steve, you already got Taker, you already got Allo, you already got the creme de la creme of WWE. And then all of a sudden, without knowing it, Hulk Hogan shows up, and then a limo shows up with Razor Ramon and X-Pac and Nash, and a year later we're going to get Billy Goldberg, and you got these guys, these mid-carders at WWE who can't even get a slot named Edge and Benoit and Guerrero, and then you're bringing in Hogan, and the Hardys can't even get a slot sometimes. None of the good cruiserweights can get a slot on TV. And then you're bringing in more talent, and then you're like, oh my God, we're already overwhelmed with talent. Now Hulk Hogan is here? It was a pretty magical time in WWE. That was even before. That was when Brock was coming up, and Cena was being developed, and Batista was being developed.
And Randy Orton, yeah.
It's Randy Orton, exactly. It was a very, very exciting time in WWE. WCW's gone, and then all of a sudden Hogan's, and they're showing up at TV. As the three bad boy NWO guys at WWE coming over to cause trouble, and you're going, wow, this is like almost overwhelming. There's so much talent here right now,
Of course, and
crazy.
If you think about it, and they have good talent now, but they had star power back then. And one thing I think they've learned the hard way is that you can never have too many stars. That's for sure. You definitely.
Wait a second. Listen, here's the problem I have. You've seen some of these. I see some of these WrestleMania lineups, and I go, some of these guys, who are stars now, couldn't have been mid-carders. And Damian Sandow. I'm not saying he's not talented. Cesario. Who's the guy who's got the belt now from Ziggler?
Del Rio.
Del Rio. These guys. I realize it's a different time, but those guys couldn't have been. Those guys are like the mid-carders now. I know the other guy's got the belt, but to me, he's a glorified mid-carder. Dolph Ziggler's has a real gift, but these guys couldn't be mid-carders in 1999, 2000. They would have had to overcome Benoit, Eddie, the Hardys. All the talent, what do you call it, talent? The cruiserweight talent that was there that wasn't being utilized. All the tag teams, Bubba and Bubba and his brother. You know what I mean? This is, that was a pretty glorious time in WWE. And now I see some of these guys and go, oh my God,
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's hard to believe that Miz was in the main event at a WrestleMania 3-4 years ago. I'm not shitting on Miz, but come on, main event at WrestleMania.
Yeah, that was.
Like, are you crazy?
Yeah, and what's funny, that almost ended up. It's funny how a great accomplishment like headlining WrestleMania kind of almost. It didn't really kill his career because God bless him, he's still making money, but his character as a heel and a babyface has never been the same, and maybe it's because he never improved or evolved or changed his look, but he's just got no heat right now. Like, I just don't even want to watch him anymore. Now, he's miscast as a babyface, and that doesn't help, and they're trying to make him out to be this fake tough guy, but you saw him. I think the biggest mistake they made with him is that you put him in there when you could have put CM Punk, and Cena and Punk would have been a much better WrestleMania main event, and all of a sudden you have The Rock, you have John Cena, you have Randy Orton, you have CM Punk, and then you have The Miz to the corner there, and you're like, oh my God, like, wow,
how did this happen? I think this kid Ziggler is pretty incredible. I always liked Nick. I always liked him. I always thought he was the one kid in that group who, he's the one you always saw that was going to make it.
You know,
Dolph Ziggler, yeah.
He's got a great look. He's not a very big kid, you know, but he's got that great look. He always had an intangible, good-looking kid, very upbeat, sweet, you know, real sweet kid. I always liked him.
Yeah, and you just mentioned Nick Nemeth, Dolph Ziggler, and you said he was the one kid you think that would make it. So do you think the other guys in Spirit Squad, I mean, even though of course they didn't have the greatest push in the world, you don't think they would have been as successful as Ziggler, even if they got a quote-unquote fair shake?
Let me see. Who we got? I think Jeter. I think Jeter's a special kid. First of all, I don't remember the one kid. The one kid.
There was Kenny Doane. There was Johnny Jeter.
Okay, we know what happened with Ken Doane. He got X'd out by Cena, right? Isn't that the word that he got Cena ended his career with the Mickey Johnson?
I think so. Yeah, I think that's what.
Okay, so let's assume that. First of all, an extremely talented kid, great body, great look. I'm not sure he had the WWE mentality, but very talented. The kid who dated Tori for a while.
Nick Mitchell.
Yeah, nothing was ever going to happen with him. WWE wasn't his thing. Jeter's got the gift. You know, Jeter's always had a gift. I would say if there were two guys who were going to make it, it would have been Jeter and Nick Nemeth. But Jeter's had many cups of coffee at the WWE. He's just a nice kid. Jeter is always a nice kid. Great look. You know, these guys need more size. You know, these guys, they're going to make it in WWE. It's very difficult to be a 5'9", 5'10" guy and make it in WWE. You got to be pretty special. And under normal circumstances, I'm not a fan of the guys the size of Bryan Danielson. And I don't think Bryan Danielson has his size, has as much talent or as much going for him as other guys his size from the past. For instance, Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit. And I don't want to argue about that. It's just, you know, it's kind of like my thing. I appreciate what he does in the business, but I like big guys. I think wrestling's a big guy sport, and I like to see big guys out there. I like to see the Canes out there rather than the Bryan Danielsons, you know. But, you know, I don't know enough about him, and I don't know, you know, I don't watch that much, but I'm not a fan of his. I like big guys. I like big guys who can wrestle and power each other down.
Hey, to each their own, man. And let's talk about First Step Global Security. Well, how'd that come about, and how can fans inquire about that and your services?
Well, it's twofold. First, for years, people have been coming up to me and saying, well, why don't you have your own business? And they used to say that to me when I had my personal training business, because I used to train celebrities and get them ready for movies. And then they'd say that, you know, about my security jobs. Why don't you have your own business? Here's the problem. I'm not a businessman. I'm just not a businessman. I'm a worker. You know, that doesn't mean I can't do tremendous things, but I need people to take care of the business aspect of it. So it was a long time coming. The other thing is what I do is, as you heard me mention, through the grace of a loving God, I am sober 26 years. I used to be a crazy man, and something happened one day and changed my life. And now I am sober. I am clean and sober for 26 years. So what I do is unfortunately the business of sobriety, unfortunately for me, but unfortunately for sobriety and 12-step stuff, sobriety has become a business. A lot of it is business owned, which means there are people, professionals. Let's use a couple of names, hypothetically. Charlie Sheen, let's say, and Lindsay Lohan, who need extra help. They don't want to go to 12 steps, and they don't want to do this. They just want somebody to help them stay away from alcohol and drugs. Well, they would hire somebody like me. The thing about me is, I am sober, and B, I am a talented and well-known and well-respected security guy. So I can knock off two birds with one stone. In other words, you can have a security guy and a sober mentor, sober coach, sober companion for the price of one. You know, I can do both of them. So I have the regular security end, you know, executive protection, close protection, you know, securing events, doing that stuff, handling talent, handling movie stars and celebrities. But I also bring the other thing too. But I can also do either one of those I'm really doing a good job. Listen, you know, a place like, you know, I mean, I've had meetings with Major League Baseball and, you know, in the NFL to keep their high-profile athletes who have drug and alcohol problems safe. But they, you know, it's not built into their in the time we're in right now. You know, the year 2013, it's not built into their budget, so they don't want to spend an extra $500,000, $600,000, even though they can afford it. And you know, I could be out there with the Josh Hamiltons or the Adam Pac-Man Joneses of the world who have alcohol problems and maybe need an extra little help. Does that, you know, that makes sense, right?
Of course.
And just security at the same time. So that's my business. First step, global security, the sober touring professionals. And that's my business, and it's been a long time coming. I wish I had done it earlier. The business is a little slow. It's a tough sell because a lot of people don't still, when you're somebody who doesn't fight the demons of alcohol and drug addiction, you don't necessarily know what I'm talking about. In other words, you could be a guy's manager. Let's say you're Josh Hamilton's manager, and you're, you know, and Josh is having a tough time. You don't know what to do. You don't know that a guy like me is available and exists to help keep Josh sober. It's going to cost you. It's going to cost you $500 to $1,000 a day, but you know, I'm there for you and I can help you. You know, but a lot of people don't understand exactly what it is. As time goes by and we get, you know, we know more and more and more about, you know, people healing and people getting better and the benefits of having a guy like me around. You know, until that happens, it's a bit of a tough sell. It's also a tough sell in the Northeast. This is largely a West Coast idea. It's a kind of a, you know, a new West Coast idea. It happens, you know, in the Northeast, but a lot of people don't understand exactly what the business is.
Well, hopefully they will, as people can see on the screen right here. I screen shared the website, firststepglobalsecurity.com. Of course, they can contact you, Jimmy Noonan at yahoo.com. You got the two contact numbers right there for in New York City and in Los Angeles. Yeah, I think Amanda Bynes could definitely use you.
Oh, yeah, there are so many
people. You know, there's a kid out in LA right now who's in detox. I know him. His name is Nick Stahl. And Nick is the kid from the movie Bully from years ago, a controversial indie movie. And he was in one of the Terminator movies. And Nick just, you know, Nick just fights the demons on a daily basis. And,
you know, he's, I think he just got arrested
recently while he's been locked down in a 5150 in California, which is a psych ward. And I, you know, it's like I wish I could go out and help him, but unfortunately I can't afford to go out there and work for free. You know, but a lot of people like that need help, and they just sometimes some people don't know it's available.
You know, they just don't know it's available. So
maybe Fred Richani will get the word out, and I'll be rich.
Well, hey, I'll definitely keep giving the word out, man, of firststepglobalsecurity.com. Definitely a positive cause. Great to hear you doing well, my friend. Jimmy, I want to thank you so much for the time. Of course, people can follow you on Twitter at Jimmy Noonan, firststepglobalsecurity.com. I understand you have another website up as well that people could check you out at, right?
TheNoonan.com.
It used to be the real Jimmy Noonan, but we let that go in TheNoonan.com. And we're just getting it together right now. It's up and it's we're in construction right now. I don't exactly know what I'm going to do with it. I mean, you know, guys like us who are in the media once in a while, we have to have a certain amount of web presence. So, you know, the more the merrier. But maybe I'll just put stuff about me and my life and my acting stuff and WWE and blah, 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 blah. You know, after a while it gets old. But, you know, you got to play the game. It's a big game, and you got to keep your name fresh, and you got to keep it out there. You know, I will be done with a couple of books in the next,
you know, few months, and I'll want to sell them. And
you know, you got to have a big web presence to sell your books too. So there you go. One will be about the wrestling business, by the way.
Very nice, very nice. We'll definitely keep us posted about that. TheNoonan.com, firststepglobalsecurity.com. Follow him on Twitter at Jimmy Noonan. Of course, you can check out the sportscourier.com. We'll provide all of Jimmy's info on there as well. Jimmy, thanks so much, man. Go have fun. Go get a barbecue.
You got it. I'm actually going to go smoke a cigar.
Nice. Very nice, man. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for your time. You're a good guy.
you're a good guy, Fred. And we would be remiss if we didn't
mention our buddy Ross Martin, and wherever he is and whatever he's doing, I hope he's doing it well. Him and Jessica Fain are probably having a little barbecue in Buffalo, New York with some friends, but he's a friend of ours that we should probably mention. And your boy Double J!
Yeah, Ross Martin and Double J Johnson. Ross Martin, a
Double
mutual friend
J
of ours.
Johnson.
And Double J Johnson, he is a no good Miami sports fan, but he is a good dude.
We all hate him.
He's a good dude. If you haven't seen my Disco, since we're talking about Double J, if you haven't seen my Disco Inferno interview, Disco Inferno is also a mutual friend of myself and Double J.
I got a
big problem with Glenn Gilberti these days.
Yeah. Well, you said, hold up, you said you have a problem with Glenn Gilberti these days?
Oh, I got a major problem with him. I have sent him
4 Facebook requests, and every one he is ignored.
So he's ignored all 4 of your Facebook requests.
Yes, he has, and that's major heat.
So I've given up. So now I told Double J Johnson that until he gets Gilberti, Disco Inferno to request me on Facebook, I'm not going to talk to Double J Johnson. So there you go.
Wow. All right. Well, Disco, if you watch this, man, I'll have to hit him up. I'm actually Facebook friends with him, so I don't know. Maybe that makes you a little more special than you. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But I will definitely pass along the message, and since Disco likes to use hashtags, I will hashtag it and let him know Noonan is on the lookout, and Noonan's got some beef. So hopefully you guys can settle it. Hopefully you can settle it on, and hopefully you guys can settle it on here. That'd be pretty cool. Not that I try to capitalize on it.
God bless, my friend. Hello to your audience, and happy 4th of July. I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome, man. Happy 4th of July. Take care.